In places like this, men fight the spoilers, the insidious, invisible living creatures that poison and maim and kill. They're crawling all over you right now. So don't put your finger to your mouth. Don't ever touch your nose. Don't cough or sneeze. Don't eat food that's been touched by anyone who has done any of these things. Otherwise, well, maybe it's time you knew more about the spoilers.
You people who work in the food industry, in the stores and supermarkets, anywhere that food is prepared, delivered, or handled, you should see the world I see through this instrument. I'll try to make it come alive for you. First of all, you have to scale down the size of everything enormously. To gain the proper perspective, let's begin with this ordinary 12-inch ruler. The 1-inch mark is here. Let's divide this inch into 25 equal parts. Now let's magnify that 1/25th of an inch so that we can divide it into 1,000 parts. Each of those lines represents an inch divided into 25,000 equal parts. That's too small to see with the naked eye, but we can see it through a microscope. That distance, 1/25,000th of an inch, is called a micron, and that's the unit we use to measure the size of bacteria. Most of them are only a fraction of a micron long. Some bacteria are so small that 400 million of them could fit into an area the size of a grain of sugar. What do bacteria look like? Something like this. These are the spoilers. They are everywhere. On your hands this minute, on your face, in your hair, inside you. They come in many shapes and forms. Some are friendly. Some are deadly, like their names. You know what these deadly types of bacteria can do to you if you've ever had a strep throat, pneumonia, tuberculosis, syphilis, typhoid, lockjaw, infected cuts, or maybe food poisoning, food spoilage, and all the human hazards connected with it begin with a single simple bacteria cell. It consists of a mass of living material called protoplasm. This is surrounded by a thin membrane called the cell wall. Some cells secrete a jelly-like substance called slime. You've seen it on spoiled meat. When the slime layer is thick enough and firm enough to have a form, it's called a capsule. Under certain conditions, some types of bacteria develop a spore. This makes them very tough to deal with. Some spores can survive after 6 hours of boiling in water. Under favorable conditions, the bacteria cell grows larger. The cell wall extends down through the middle, and finally the cell separates and becomes 2 cells. The process continues. 2 cells become 4. The 4 become 8. This process is known as binary fission. Here's how it can work. Let's say we started at 9 o'clock with 1 bacterium. At 9:15, there would be 2. At 9:30, there would be 4. At 9:45, 8. At 10 o'clock, 16. At 11, 256. At 12, 4,096. At 1 o'clock, 65,000. However, in real life, we seldom start with 1 bacterium. Right now, you would probably put 1,000 bacteria on a piece of ham if you put your thumb on it. In that case, if you thumbed it at 9 o'clock, after 4 hours, or at 1 o'clock, where your thumb touched, there would be 65 million bacteria. In 12 hours, the thumbprint bacteria colony would have grown to 100 trillion. This is not a theoretical mathematical trick. Bacteria do grow that way when food is mishandled. They live and excrete spoilage and poisons on the food products we sell. Bacteria eat the same things people do. They like meats, cooked or raw. They can live on vegetables, fruits, baked goods, or delicatessen foods, and dairy products. They also live and grow in odd places, in rust on a pipe, in sawdust, in grease-soaked wood, in droplets of water on cooler ceiling, on specks of meat in a slicing machine, on saw blades, in vegetable debris on the bottom of a display case, on all floors, on aprons, shoes, wiping rags, trash barrels, hand towels. You name it, bacteria are there and growing. One important thing about bacteria, to get around from place to place, they have to hitchhike. And they do. On a cough or a sneeze, a rat, mouse, roach, fly, fingers, clothing, splash droplets. They also get around by direct contact, food to food, person to person, person to food, and from object to object. A typical example, well, here's one of a salmonella journey. It starts on a farm. Although it could be anywhere, there are warm-blooded animals like cattle, sheep, pigs, horses, dogs, chickens, mice, and rats. Or people. Salmonella can live in the intestinal tract without causing noticeable symptoms, but can also produce severe illness. Salmonella gets onto food by contamination, direct or indirect, with feces from warm-blooded animals. Some contamination of this sort is inevitable in the slaughtering and subsequent handling of meat animals. But one way or another, salmonella gets around.
Helen, call a doctor.
Then there's staphylococci, the group of organisms that cause infections, boils, pimples, sore throat, and the untold misery of the food poisoning outbreaks you read about. And untold thousands of cases you don't read about. On meat and food products, staphylococci can grow to enormous numbers without producing any noticeable change in color, odor, or taste of the product. Staphylococci, when it grows on food, particularly a cooked product, produces a poison like a snake. Once it's there, heating the food may kill the staphylococci itself, but the toxin the bacteria has secreted remains. That's poison. The result? The kind of headlines nobody wants to see. Other enemies to be aware of are Clostridium botulinum, the bacteria that produces the nerve killer botulism. It's found in most soils and can contaminate the product. Fish are a prime source of this organism. It spreads quickly and dangerously in situations where fish handling is not isolated from other foods. The delicatessen department must be aware of a special kind of food poisoner with a long name, Clostridium perfringens. This bacteria produces a heat-resistant spore which is not affected by cooking. When the food temperature has dropped below 126 degrees Fahrenheit, the perfringens multiply enormously. If the cooked food is heated again, as it often is in the delicatessen area, growth is further accelerated. There are all kinds of bacteria. Some like it hot, thrive at temperatures 130 and above. Some like it cold and damp, 40 degrees and below. Some need air to live. Some live where air is not present, like the bottom of a warm kettle of stew. Immersed as we are in this sea infested by hostile organisms, surrounded on every hand by multiplying legions of invisible enemies, what are our defenses? There are several. First, things we know about the enemy that can be used against him. Item, the bacteria growth curve. On a chart which depicts bacteria growth with the passage of time, we see that when bacteria is transferred to a new location, say from the thumb to a hand, it takes a while for them to get used to the new location. Growth is slow at first. This is called the lag phase of bacteria growth. In the food industry, the lag phase is about 4 hours. After that, growth occurs very fast. Item, temperature zones. We can control bacteria growth by controlling the temperature of the foods we handle. While different bacteria prefer different temperature conditions, the danger zone for foods is between 45 degrees and 140 degrees. When we keep foods above 140 or below 45 degrees, we can handle the bacteria problem. It follows that the length of time foods remain in the danger zone must be kept to a minimum for good bacteria control. So the rule is, handle products fast that must be handled in the food danger zone. Remember, you have a total of 4 hours before fast bacteria growth sets in. If it takes an hour to chill a warm product, the lag phase is reduced to 3 hours. Meat cutting rooms are usually held at temperatures over 45 degrees. Fast work is needed to get the products cut and wrapped and into the display coolers as quickly as possible. It's important to check temperatures everywhere food is handled or stored. In coolers, preparation rooms, and in display cases. In food handling, do not, repeat, do not allow fresh meat to contact soiled, slimy surfaces. Do not allow raw meat, cooked meat, fish, or fowl to become exposed to one another by contact, direct or indirect. For example, never change from one item to another without cleaning and then sanitizing the work surfaces, tools, hands, and clothing. Never store ready-to-eat product close to raw meat products. Do not cut ready-to-eat products with tools that have been used to cut raw products, unless the tools are thoroughly cleaned and sanitized between time. Do not store fresh produce in coolers that have become seeded with millions of unseen spores from mold growing on the walls and ceiling. The cooked food delicatessen area is a dangerous area. Nobody but authorized personnel, people who work there, should be allowed in the area. Watch delivery trucks and the people who work on them. If they're not clean, they can contaminate every area they walk through. Always wash your hands and use a sanitizer after every absence from your workstation. When you change from one product to another, when you drop something and pick it up again, or any time you touch anything that could spread bacteria. Follow the established cleaning and sanitizing schedule for every area of the store. Inspect all areas regularly and do your part to abide by rules to the letter. Only people who understand the real menace of the spoilers and how to deal with it can control bacteria. The stakes are high in this battle. The security of your job, your health, and that of the people who come into your store may very well depend on how well you guard against these unseen enemies. This is no representation. This is real. You are looking at dangerous living bacteria as seen through a microscope. They are small, less than 1/25,000th of an inch. They grow at an enormous rate. They are everywhere, on everything. They can cause disease, even death. The only way they can get around is to hitchhike. But they can be controlled by handling food quickly in the temperature danger zones, by cleaning and sanitizing all tools and work areas, and especially yourself. Every day you are face to face with the enemy. What are you going to do about it?